I'm Angharad from YPN, and I am here today with one of the founders of YPN, Ant Lyons. And today in this short video, we're going to be talking through one of his projects. So welcome, Ant, to the call.
Hello, weird to be on the other side of things. Hello.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So first of all, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you got to where you are now?
Okay, so for the last 11 and a half years, I've been sort of co-founder of Your Property Network magazine. And then through that time, I had some buy-to-let experience prior to that. And so I've been continuing to build a buy-to-let portfolio with single lets and HMOs. And then over the last few years, a number of developments increasing in size. So it started off small one-bed flats, refurbs, and then small houses into 2 flats, and then refurb of 4 flats, and then just going up a little bit each time. So.
And we're going to be talking about your biggest project yet today.
Yeah, so this is a project that we have probably been involved in for about 3 years now, really from start to finish. And so whenever people talk about, I was in and out of that deal in 6 months and it's a bigger project, I really think, really? Okay. Because this one, we are, so it's 10 apartments in total, and we have 2 of which are still, the last sales are going through on them as we speak now.
Okay, so it was a grade 2 listed building, and it was an old care home.
Yeah, it was a former care home owned by a charitable trust, and they hadn't really used it as a convalescence home originally, and it hadn't really been used for any of those kind of uses for a while. So they were actually using it sort of admin offices for a number of time, using a fraction of the building. And it's actually in really, really good state of repair. But obviously to transform it from, and I think we're going to see some pictures now, hopefully, for this very grand building into 10 high-end luxury apartments was no small feat.
No, and it had some interesting restrictions or covenants on it, didn't it?
Yeah, so it's been sold by a charitable trust, and I think what they definitely didn't want was it to be turned into, whatever, student accommodation for 60 people. So they put a restriction on it for only to be sort of used for the over 55s. And so we had to look very carefully at that market and try and assess the levels of demand for that type of property, what the prices are. And it's quite a complicated market because you see new kind of retirement properties come on the market, and they can be at sort of price premium, very expensive. And then sometimes 20 years later, they've actually fallen in value quite a lot, because when people move in, they're in their, say, 60s, and then when they move on elsewhere, they might be in their 80s or 90s. So it's a different proposition. So we had to look very carefully about the end market. And because the values are relatively high, like the average is 260,000 per apartment, you don't have a fallback position. So you can't refinance them and sit on them and rent them out if you can't sell them. So you need to be really, really sure that, the product you've got is going to sell at the end of it. And that's difficult. Honestly, you look at the building from the outside and go, what an amazing place, what a nice area to be in. Can I see people wanting to sort of downsize from their family home into this? And then you bring in some local estate agents and see if they agree with your thoughts on it. And then you bring in some price comparables of those types of properties, so the over 55s market, and say, where were we positioned in this? If we're bringing in a premium product, are we still price competitive? And a lot of it is gut feel. You need to sort of, it's not an exact science by any stretch.
And for the over 55 market, people often think of, handrails and pulley cords.
Yeah.
Did you add in any extra facilities like that? Or?
No, we didn't do any of that. We had a couple of conversations at some point about whether or not we should put in a stair lift, because people were, weirdly, although it's over 55s, a lot of the buyers are actually in their 70s, and they are genuinely starting to think about that next step and mobility issues. So we haven't put in any kind of grab rails or adapted the properties in any way. Had they wanted us to, I think we probably would have been more than happy to do so. Shall I talk about finance and so forth for a bit? Because when we look at the building, it looks amazing, doesn't it?
It looks like quite Brighton Pavilion.
That's it. Yeah, apparently, yeah. So when I sort of talked to my friends in London, like, oh, how much do you think I pay for this? And they were like, oh, 5 million, 6 million and stuff like that. And we paid 525,000 for the building. And it was originally going to be a little bit less than that, but we had one of those weird situations where it was being sold by a charitable trust, and one of the trustees who was in charge of this element of it sadly passed away after we'd agreed the deal with him, before we signed all the paperwork on it. So nobody else there really knew anything about it, and then they wanted just a little bit more money, and so that kind of stretched things out a little bit, and we were a little bit unsure about getting whether or not we get planning on it. So we had an option agreement on the property to buy it within a certain time frame. So I think it gave us either 6 or 9 months to get planning on it and then complete on the purchase. And if we hadn't got planning, then we would have been out our architect's fees and costs and the option fee, which I think was about £25,000. So that's our at-risk money. It was around about £60,000 at risk if we didn't get planning. Clearly, we had a lot of input from planning consultant, our architect, before that, to get their confidence that planning shouldn't be an issue.
I guess 60,000 is a lot less money to lose than 500.
Well, it's definitely a lot less painful than ending up owning a care home which can't run as a care home and having bought it for £500,000. So it's a lot of money to put at risk, but it's mitigated risk. We try and understand it as much as possible. And in terms of the finance side of things, once we had planning, it was all pretty straightforward. We had a small number of private investors that put in some money, some of our money, and then we financed the balance with a crowdfunding platform. And that works very much in the way that a traditional bank does, in that they send out a valuer to inspect it throughout the process, and then they release funds to pay the builder throughout. Now, every development comes with a speed bump or two in it, and definitely on these types of projects, the speed bump is trying to control the budget.
I can imagine that on such a large building with quite a strong history, it wouldn't cover.
Yeah, and it wasn't. The biggest problem is this: that you don't actually know the work you've got to do until you're in there. So you don't own the building, but you're getting build quotes on it. And a novice might think, or a less experienced developer might think, okay, you've got your quote, that's the figure. That's not the figure, because within the quote you have these things called provisional sums. So you might say, okay, we're putting in a provisional sum of £60,000 for structural work, but you can't do a full structural survey because you don't own the building at that point. So you can't stop ripping it apart. So you don't actually know how much this stuff's going to cost you until you do the work. So controlling the budget is akin to, like riding a rodeo bull, really, and trying to keep under control, because it is genuinely, you start out with a figure in mind. Well, I think ours was like, it's going to cost about £75,000 per apartment to do each of these. And that sounds like a lot of money. But, we actually spent probably another £25,000 per apartment. So over £1 million on the build. And that £250,000, that's only coming out of our end. That's coming out of our profit. So you have to make sure that a project on this size and scale has got plenty of profit in it, big 25-30% margin in there. Because if you don't, it's only going to disappear, because the build cost will cost more than you think. It'll take longer to sell than you think. You'll spend more on other stuff than you think, and people who are buying it are going to want to make an offer on the price. So all you ever see is that profit margin just chip down and down and down, and that is the truth of what these sorts of developments are like.
Did sort of the additional cost, did that have any impact on the time frame as well, the timeline?
Not really. There was some little bits at the start where, they didn't start the structural work until a little bit later, and, dealing with the builders at this level as well was very different. So if you and I were to sort of do a house now, if you're doing up our own house or your place or whatever, you'd go around and you discuss it with the builder, and then they do the work. But that's not how it works with these. They want everything kind of in triplicate from the architect and from the project manager, written instructions, because they don't want any comeback on them. So everything takes longer. They're always shouting for what they call RFIs, requests for information, to be returned. So clarification on certain points. So I got copied into 27 emails on the location of a loft hatch one time, and I was like, I don't really care where it goes as long as it's in the loft. But dealing with projects on a bigger size like this it's just, it just works a bit differently. And the numbers are so much bigger as well. And here's the thing that nobody tells you as well, is that there's very little you can do to influence the sale at the end. Estate agents, we work with some brilliant estate agents, but really they don't have that many tools in their bag, because everybody's looking on Rightmove. Everyone's looking at the same portals, Zoopla and Rightmove. They're all looking at the same properties and comparing yours to somebody else's. So really the only tool that you've actually got in your bag is A, to produce the best looking property you can in the price bracket, so the best in the market for that particular price bracket, and B, you can chop the price. And other than that, there's very little you can do to influence sales. And in this end of the market, particular, where you've got people who are downsizing, it might take them 6 months or a year to sell their family home to move into yours. So, it goes a little bit slower. If you were selling, and I've done smaller developments on properties where it's first-time buyers and buy-to-let investors, those things move really quickly because no one's in a chain. But these ones are very different.
Yeah, but on a project of this size, who are the key people that you need to have involved?
Okay, well, you've got your builder, your contractor, and that's not just one person. They'll have a quantity surveyor and a project manager, and a whole team of people, as well as the subbies actually doing the work. You've got an architect and probably a project manager, separate project manager, possibly a quantity surveyor on your side as well. You've got a commercial solicitor, so not a conveyancing solicitor, absolutely from the outset. You've got your estate agents, and that they all work together, because you're not finishing the product and then selling it. You're trying to market it throughout, and that there's various mechanisms where the solicitors need to have done their contracts by the time that happens. So yeah, all the plates need to keep spinning at the same time. So those are probably some of the key players. But they would have other people as well. They'd have structural engineers that are coming in, and M&E consultants in there that they're all dealing with. But possibly you might be at arm's length from that. So, did we talk about the profit? I can't remember if we talked about the profit, but
Let's talk about those.
Okay, so I'll give some very headline figures. Okay, so we paid £525,000 for the building. We spent, near as damn it, about £1 million on the build of it. And then the sale price is total around about 2.6 million. So it would be really easy to say, wow, you've made £1 million profit on that. But there are other costs that come off of that. You've got some very hefty finance costs, legal costs to buy, legal costs to sell, estate agents' fees, all those kind of things. So we'll probably end up at around about sort of £700,000-800,000 mark when everything is accounted for, which is a huge sum of money. But, it's not just me. I have joint venture partners in it, and but genuinely life-changing deals. And if anybody says it's the same as doing a smaller project, it's definitely not. It's definitely more involved and a bit more stressed because of the numbers involved. In my opinion, definitely worth it. And you shouldn't be afraid to step up to the next project. It is about mitigating your risk. And I know we've done a full article on this, and that's one of the things I talk about all the time from the day one, how you mitigate risk, how you limit the risk involved in these types of projects. And I think we've got a lot of that in the article, which is available to download. Yeah.
And it will be in the link below.
Click on the link below.
Down here.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you for my time.
Your time.
Okay. See you later. Bye.